This is Eitan Weinstein.
And I'm Naor Menninger, and you're listening to Two Nice Jewish Boys.
This podcast is sponsored by The Forward. Stay up to date with unlimited access to news, culture, and opinion all through a Jewish lens. And for our listeners, for 2NJB listeners, get 6 months of The Forward for $15. An exclusive subscription offer for our listeners, forward.com/2NJB, and get 6 months for $15. Also in collaboration with Arutz Sheva, IsraelNationalNews.com. And last but not least, in collaboration with Australian Jewish News, check them out at ajn.timesofisrael.com. There's no better way to introduce our next guest than by telling you about the following tweet. A few days ago, Gideon Levy published an op-ed in Haaretz and wrote, "There is not and there cannot be an Arab who stands silent for the siren on the Memorial Day for fallen IDF soldiers, the soldiers who killed his fellow nationals, who conquered his land, who banished his fathers, and who continue to abuse his brothers. An Arab who stands during the siren commits a lie in his soul and betrays his nation, period." Yoseph Haddad, an Arab Israeli and CEO of the NGO Aravim tweeted a photo of the excerpt and wrote, "Gideon, I am an Arab Israeli, and I'm a wounded IDF veteran. I stand during the siren with pride and with sorrow every single year and think about my friends who I lost as they fought for the entire country, Jews and Arabs." Aravim Zelezeh is an NGO dedicated to connecting the Arab community to Israeli society. Aravim Zelezeh directly translates to Arabs one for another, but is also a play on the old Jewish proverb, all of Israel is responsible one for another. We are super thrilled to be joined today by Yosef Haddad to talk about just how integrated Arabs are in Israeli society.
If at all. Let's find out.
Oh,
Let's find out together.
So before we get into the episode, guys, if you're listening, you probably have some kind of interest in Israel, probably a lot of interest in Israel, and Masa Israel Journey is sponsoring this episode.
Yes.
Masa Israel Journey. They're the marketplace for long-term opportunities in Israel. Guys, you have to check them out. Go to masaisrael.org/2niceJewishBoys. masaisrael.org/2niceJewishBoys spelled out. They have amazing opportunities in Israel, right? And now, since Corona, basically, you can do things remote. You don't have to know Israel. You don't even have to come to Israel. Okay, you can just do everything remotely, and you get funded. If you get accepted, if you apply and get accepted, you get funded. So really amazing, amazing opportunities. I did a bunch of Masa programs myself. Huge part of the reason I'm here.
We're on their website.
Yes, we're on the website. You can internship with us.
Yes.
So go to masaisrael.org/2niceJewishBoys. TWO, Nice Jewish Boys.
The ultimate Israeli experience. What else can you ask for?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
First of all, it's an honor to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Very excited as well. What an opening. Straight and forward, huh?
Yeah, I think it's
I
the
like
best
it.
way.
I
Naor
like
sent me
it.
that tweet, and I loved it, so it had to be part of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it says it all. I mean, there is a huge, false information about who we are and especially about, the Israeli Arabs. And we must understand that there's 2 million Israeli Arabs living in Israel. And people think that what you see on the TV in terms of, the politicians, the politics that, represent us represent us. And they don't get people outside of the Arab society. They don't get that there is more than that. And there is a reason why for now the joint list is with this number and that. But we'll explain that and we'll talk about it because I'm sure you will ask. But what I'm trying to say is the generalization that's, when people do take something
Stigma.
and the stigma, and then you generalize it, make it like Supposed to, like, if we talk about the Haredim, you see a little bit of Haredim, then it's all the Haredim. You see a little bit of that on the Arab, so it's all the Arab. I cannot accept that.
But what is it that... Yeah.
I'm just gonna have to say that it's, first of all, it's ridiculously racist. That also it's so funny that, like, right, the Gideon Levy is like the quintessential leftist, stands for liberal rights and stuff, and it's just so racist to say that an Arab has to be some way.
Yeah, but don't forget one important thing that I didn't say it in that tweet, but I did wrote it in my post on Facebook, which is also, we're talking about, first of all, the Bedouin community. They're Muslim Arabs. The Druze community, they are Arabs. That we're talking about just a year ago, during the Memorial Day, I was in Arara, and in Arara there's you have a monument for Israeli Arabs, Muslims and Christians who fell in battle, battling in the IDF, and suddenly, when he says there's no one, suddenly there is hundreds of soldiers, Arab Israeli soldiers, who actually lost their lives, and thousands of members of family that feel sorry and sorrow every year. So coming and saying that in this way, it is racist. It is racist.
But what is it that he just doesn't get, him and his friends?
It's just very easy, to come and say, listen, everyone who lives here in Israel and he's an Arab, he's not an Israeli. And I can understand where it comes from, where it's coming from. I understand. Because we have to divide, first of all, the generations here in the Israeli Arab society. There is the older generation, there's the younger generation. And let's see together what's going on. My grandfather, my grand-grandfather, they were part of the whatever happened in 48, which is pre and post-Israel. We're talking about the Independence War, and then we have the 6-Day War, 67, and then we have Yom Kippur War in 73. But by the way, up until late 70s, beginning early 80s, there was a military regime in some cities and villages in the Arab society here in Israel.
What do you mean?
What I mean?
The IDF ruled those cities.
Yes,
yeah,
of course. And more than that, we must understand that when you come with this feeling with the older generation, obviously there is some sort of load that coming from the past. Mm-hmm. But the simple fact is that the young generation, I'm among them, and I'm talking about those who were born in the mid 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. We didn't have this.
Yeah, but don't you paint a bit of an optimistic picture? Because we studied in Tel Aviv University. Yeah. So in Tel Aviv University, when you still had students who would come to the campus back in the day, mm-hmm. you would see their demonstrations. Yeah. And the hatred.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that and I understand that, but this is something.
They also represent a big chunk.
It's because they are part. It's not a big chunk, not at all, actually. It's because it is part of an organizations and political parties that they are embedded for years, centuries, not years, centuries, 70 years we've been thinking one way. But the fact is that when this student comes and then suddenly he is pushed to be part of Al-Jabha, which is part of the joint list, or Tajammu, which is part of the joint list.
What are these organizations?
It's
student organizations.
It's student organization, part of the political parties from the joint list.
And when you're a Palestinian Israeli who comes to the campus, if you don't participate, then people.
First of all, I must correct you. Israeli Arabs are Israeli Arabs. A fact. It's by
not
statistics.
Palestinians, you mean?
Listen, there was a survey by the Democratic Institute here in Israel, and I can send you after that the survey itself. They asked Israeli Arabs, how do you find this? Do you define yourselves? Mm-hmm. Only 9% define themselves as Palestinians. The majority, more than 76%, define themselves Israeli Arabs. And I'm not saying that everyone is defining themselves like this, and I'm not saying that everyone is saying that they are Palestinian or they're Israeli Arabs, but the fact is that, especially in the young generation, we must understand that there is a different approach. I like to call it Israelization. There is some sort of an Israelization. And this Israelization comes because, as I said, the young generation didn't pass whatever our older generation passed.
So could it be that there's some truth to what Gideon Levy said? I mean, because the way you're describing it, there were these sentiments in the older generation.
But Eitan didn't finish the point. I didn't understand
I'm just asking, and I'm playing devil's advocate here. But Gideon Levy was describing, and what you just described is that your parents in the older generation maybe do have this sentiment and these feelings of like, not being, not belonging here and belonging somewhere else. And maybe this Israelization is what he's describing as betraying your forefathers.
Well, first of all, he literally, as I said, he put a general on everybody.
Yeah. Without
any exception. Obviously, his column was very direct and obvious. So if you want to come and say part of, okay, then fine. Part of, okay.
A large part of, even if you want to say.
You know what?
Which might not be true, but I'm saying.
I will go even with, if you want to say a large part, which by the way, he is also mistaken by, my opinion anyway. And I see how do you say? I'm on the street. I see the shetach. I see what's going on in the
boots on the ground.
Boots on the ground, actually, exactly. So if you want to say something like this, you don't make a general assumption, and even it's not even assumption. He was very decisive. This is what it is. Enough, I'll tell you what. It's very simple. Enough one person like me to contradict what he said.
Yeah,
and I did it.
So let's put Gideon Levy aside.
Yeah, but I to me, when I talk to people about Israeli Arabs, or Arab Israelis, and even the people you're talking about, the younger generation, I draw the line when I ask a simple question. What's your take on the right of return? Why? Because I think there's a huge consensus for the right of return. And to me, as a Jew living in the state of Israel, the right of return, by definition, means my destruction. So if you support the right of return, you do not want me to be here. That's my logic.
So my logic is very simple. I'm realistic. Okay? When I start my journey as a CEO of the organization Together Vouch for Each Other, and all our aim is to bring the Arab-Israeli society closer to the Israeli society and bridge the gaps between Jews and Arabs here in Israel. We are we're not a political movement or organization. But when we funded ourselves, it was because of our leaders. Because they didn't do nothing for us. The
members of Knesset.
The members of the Knesset and anyone who can actually affect our life, they were only talking or doing about what's going on outside of Israel, Palestine, and I actually can say it easily. They're concentrating on Gaza instead of Nazareth. They're concentrating on Ramallah or Jenin instead of Rahat or Shfa'amer. And we came as an organization, we said we want to treat the main problems of our society, from illegal weapons, from violence against women. We want better infrastructures, better education system, equality. We want to work on this. But we also said one more thing. We want to do it out of a logic. Because, and I spoke actually in an Arab TV program in Channel 12, and I said it directly to the people there. And I said, if someone thinks that there will come a day that this state will not define themselves, the Israeli state, will not defined as a Jewish state as well, and thinking that it will be only democratic state,
they're hallucinating.
Then they're hallucinating. Okay. So I'm coming from a logic place where say, okay, I'm not focusing on removing the word Jewish from the state, but I'm more focusing on democratic. So I don't have a problem with Israel being a Jewish and democratic state, okay?
Mm-hmm.
My focus on how can we make the democratic word definition stronger, which means equality. And I don't care. I don't care about whatever it's the right of return or whatever. I don't care about it. All I care about is you and me. You're Jewish, I'm an Arab. We're both Israelis. We have the same equal rights here in Israel.
Yeah.
Okay?
But
So for me, just to finish my point. So for me, I came and I said that Israel can exist as Jewish and democratic state, and those who are afraid from democratic, then they have a weak belief in their Judaism, as a Jewish. And those who are afraid of the fact that Israel can be also democratic and Jewish, they can come to me and see that I'm very successful in a Jewish democratic state. Obviously, there's a lot of problems, and I'm sure we will talk about the Chok HaLeom, the national bill law, and I will explain also about it, and how we can resolve and fix that law as well. There is problems. Israel is not perfect. It's far from being perfect. But in order for us to bridge the gaps, we need to find this logic equation that we will go and follow it.
Wait, but just to push on my
Yeah.
question, because I didn't get an answer, really.
Yeah,
Yes, I understand what you think, but I don't think that young Arab Israelis that you talked about, they would concur, because I feel they do support the right of return. Most of them.
Well, I have to,
And
you have to
how
come to
can I
s-
live with them when they support this?
You have to come to speak to the activists in our organization. We're both, but from the Christian community, from the Muslim community, from the Druze community, from the Bedouin community, those who don't hear their voices.
But don't you agree with me that most of young Israeli Arabs support the right of return?
Most of the Israeli Arabs right now focusing on how can we be safe and confident in our own houses and villages and cities, how we can.
But when you ask them about the right of return,
No,
Why?
no. That's okay. That's okay for asking these questions.
No,
this
I
is
just
very
wanna move
important.
on, but-
What I'm
no,
saying,
it's important.
what I'm saying is that they're not focusing on that because they are not Palestinians. We are not talking about the Palestinians in Jenin and Gaza. We're talking about Israeli Arabs living here. And by the way, we are seeing what's happening right now in the terms of the last 3 years. 3 elections. You see that the Israeli Arabs want to be integrated, want to be more involved. And we also, more than that, you can see that the Israeli Arabs are in a positions where they affect your life. As a Jewish, you can go to the hospitals, you can go to the police stations, you can go everywhere.
I just got vaccinated by an Arab doctor today.
Probably the percentage of you being vaccinated by a doctor or nurse Arab is more highly than a Jewish nurse or doctor. So what I'm saying is that it's not the main focus anymore. And the reason is because more and more Israeli Arabs are realistic and starting to understand that they want to move on. This is why I'm telling you that when we talk about the joint list, and you know what? This is something good. Talking about it now, and I'm remembering that I wanted even to say something to you guys. We're speaking in English, but obviously when we spoke together, we spoke in Hebrew, and why I thought about what I'm going to say, because I was going to say that you should go and check the social media in Arabic to see how the Israeli Arab actually responding to the joint list on their illusions and their promises that they will do for us, and everybody thinks that they're gonna talk again and they're not gonna do again. They're not they're taking care of us, and they're selling illusions again. And then I thought that you can't do it because both of you probably don't know to read or to speak Arabic. So.
But you have translate on.
Yeah, well, it's not as the same as to speak and do.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that this is to push another agenda of mine. Another agenda of mine is that language is somewhat of a bridge between two societies, and the way that the Israeli Arabs learn our Hebrew, I think every Jew here in Israel must learn Arabic. And by learning Arabic, by the way, you would be more surprised when you speak that language to someone in the Arab society you would be very surprised that it's boots on the ground, you know? You would see that this is something that doesn't really care about right now. The right of return. We care about a lot of really fundamental issues in
Food on the table.
Yes.
So I'm also like, there's tons of stuff to say, but I want us to maybe take a step back and
Okay.
Yeah.
tell us about Yosef Haddad. Like, where did you grow up? What's your background? Because a lot of people might be like, where is this guy coming from?
Yeah. Well, the question is,
Where did you grow up?
yeah. But what I want to say is, eventually, I grew up in. I was born in Haifa, the biggest mixed city
Yeah.
in Israel, and I grew up in Nazareth, the biggest Arabic city. And a lot of people ask me why I am doing or how I become
Yeah.
what I'm now and why I'm doing what I'm doing now. And actually, the answer is literally from where I coming from.
Mhm.
And where I was born. And I was born in the biggest mixed city in Israel, where you have Jews, Christian, Muslim, and Druze, you know, all of them together in one amazing city, like, the city of Haifa. And I grew up in an Israeli society that I'm not naive. I know what is the Israeli society. And even 20, 30 years ago, they were still, divided as even now, if not more, but it was still with the same problems. But I grew up in a different society. I grew up in a society where Jews and Arabs, all of us together, playing football in Kiryat Eliezer neighborhood. And we didn't really care that we are Arab or a Jew. We only care about playing football. And because of that, we become best friends. And then people would come to my house for holidays. I would go for Eid al-Adha and Christmas, and I would go also for Passover. And I know the Echad, mi yodea, ani yodea, Echad, Eloheinu, Eloheinu. So
You also have holiday of holidays in Haifa.
the holidays of the holidays, of course, celebrating the three holidays of Christianity, Muslims, and Jews. So it's amazing. It's really amazing. So this is the kind of society that I grew in. And when I arrived at the age of 18, maintained my connection with all my friends, both Jews and Arabs. My Jewish friends and my Jewish friends, started their way in the IDF. And I asked myself a simple question. Why I'm not in the IDF? Why I'm not serving my country as well? I'm an Israeli, just as any other friend who was drafted to the IDF. And I also asked myself that the last time that I checked is the IDF, it's not the JDF, it's Israeli Defense Force, not a Jewish Defense Force. And I've decided to volunteer. I also decided to volunteer to Golani Brigade, which is one of the best, if not the best. Actually, it is the best, brigade in the IDF.
One of the brigades that probably gets the most flack for being, quote unquote, racist.
No, not
No?
really. No, because if you're,
I think the stigma of the Golani Brigade is that they're a
Well,
bunch
you
of
should-
Arab-hating.
you
No, I'm saying
should-
the stigma. I'm not saying that that's how it is.
yeah, well, it is.
It's bullshit.
A BS, bullshit
You can say
stigma.
bullshit.
All right, great. Well, it is a bullshit stigma. I can tell you, once my foot stepped inside of the unit, I was as equal as everyone else, and I got even treated, most respect, and we were just family. But I guess that I wanna share with you what happened just a month before I started my service in the IDF. I started my service on the 15th of November 2003, and I was pretty sure of my the path that I took and the decision that I took. And then I lost some of my Arab friends because of that decision. Obviously, they had a problem with me going to the IDF. Still, I was sure, but a month and a week before I was supposed to start my service, a terrible event happened in Israel. But that event, because of that terrible event, unfortunately, I say that, it made it even more clear that I'm doing the right thing. And on the 4th of October 2003, a female Palestinian suicide bomber went into a Maximum restaurant in Haifa, and she blew up the restaurant, ended up killing 21 civilians. Among the dead were Arabs, Jews and Arabs.
Haifa.
In Haifa, yes. And then it hits you, and you understand that terrorism doesn't really care if you are an Arab or a Jew. As long as you're Israeli, you are a target
Like the rockets from Lebanon.
So, taking me now, 3 years later, I participated in the Second Lebanon War, and one of the things that my friend also told me and asked me actually, how do you feel on going and fighting other Arabs? You are an Arab. And I said, I didn't fought an Arabs. I fought a terrorist organization. I fought Hezbollah. And then it was like a couple of months later when...
It's like asking someone, how do you feel fighting human beings?
Yeah. But the thing is, the crazy thing is that when we finished this conversation when they just totally agreed with me, because a few months later, I was actually in the hospital because I was injured badly during that war. And when my friends came and they asked me, what do you think about? And we told you about, fighting other Arabs, fighting terrorist organization, And I said, as I told you guys, I fought a terrorist organization. I fought Hezbollah. And that terrorist organization didn't really care about if we are Arabs or Jews. And to back it up, 44 civilians died during the war. Half of them were Israeli Arab Muslims. 2 babies were killed from my city, Nazareth. Dozens were injured when rockets fell on Nazareth. So the terrorist organization, when they attacked Israel, they attacked the Arab society as well. And when I was there, I was defending Israel, and I was defending both Jewish and Arab society. So to complete my message is that I not only, like, if you'd ask me, okay, knowing that also whatever you all that journey in the IDF, plus the fact that you were injured very badly during the war itself, 2 days before ceasefire, by the way, my luck. Would I do it again? 100%. But I'm gonna surprise you. Today, as a public figure, as the CEO of Together Vouch for Each Other, am I advocating to go and serve in the IDF? My answer is no. I am supporting anyone who wants to go and do that. I'm supporting of that. But I'm advocating for something called the national service. And our motto in the organization is serve your country while serving your community at the same time. And I think it's the best solution for the Israeli army. It's actually the key, to enter the Israeli society. This is how I feel.
Just for our audience who doesn't know, national service is like, instead of drafting to the IDF, you can volunteer in hospitals, organizations, NGOs
MADA,
for 2 years.
The police,
for 2
fire
years.
Department, 1 year or 2 years. You can do that. And by the way, get this. This is amazing. 10 years ago, only 200 volunteers per year from the Israeli Arab Society. Do you want to guess how much now? 10 years later? 5,000 volunteers from the Arab side, most of them coming from the Muslim community, volunteers yearly in the national service. You know what that means? Within 10 years, obviously the number will go and grow more and more. So within 10 years, there will be tens of thousands of Israeli Arabs serving the country.
Why
and
mostly
then tell
from...
me, why mostly from the Muslim community? It's because of the number, obviously.
Okay.
You have 1.6 million Muslims.
Okay.
So that makes sense. But it's still, it is something.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we talk about tens of thousands who serve the country, and then you come into me in 10 years and ask me the same question about the return and everything, and we will talk about it again. And we will see that suddenly there is a number and people after what I'm saying and what I'm representing. And this is the main thing, because a lot of people would ask, so do you represent yourself, or is there people behind you?
Are there numbers behind?
Are there numbers behind me?
So you seem like a hopeless optimist, right? It's like we can't get a negative word out of you. But I'm going to ask you to challenge yourself and tell me what are some of the biggest challenges you face when encountering the Arab-Israeli community.
Easy. I have to be honest with you.
Like the top 3 challenges that you see in the Arab-Israeli community.
The toppest, or number 1, is that we are afraid to speak out loud. And because of that, when you go and to talk about the other issues, they're not important. I don't care about problem number 2 or problem number 3. It doesn't really matter. It starts from problem number 1. We are afraid to talk. We're afraid to speak out loud. Listen, like me, there is a lot. Like me, thinking like me. Not in terms of, enlisting to the army and all that. No, I'm talking about being interrogated in the Israeli society and being part of the Israeli society and want to affect and want to be in high positions and you know to be, as I said, part of the society, the Israeli society, the whole Israeli society. And by the way, define themselves also as Israeli Arabs. Like me, there's a lot. Mm-hmm. The difference between me and the others is that I'm speaking out loud. I'm very lucky that because we have this organization together about truth, suddenly there's a roof for people to come and be part of that organization, and you know what, to get out of the closet, as we say, and to speak out loud.
Sometimes really they need to come out of the closet.
I know. It's this. If there is some sort of a criticism and some sort of I don't want to say frustration, but I do want to say that I love to give examples from my journey in the last 3 years. Go to my Facebook page, for instance. Any post that I put on, you would see thousands of messages and comments from the Jewish community, but only few from the Arab society. And the reason is because they're afraid to talk. But if you come and if I open right now my phone and I show you my private inbox, you would see thousands of messages from Israeli Arabs saying, Kol hakavod, kol al-ihtiram. Keep doing like this. Finally someone with your voice speaking out loud. Sorry for not supporting you, but I want to give you even it should shock you. My sister, by the way, my family supports me, and because of that support, I'm able to maintain this energy and continue with that. But I don't want to focus on my sister. My sister admires me. One time we're sitting down in the living room, we're sitting down all the family, and then she told me, listen, I have to share with you what happened to me today. I saw a post of you. I was so proud of you. I start writing a comment. Yosef, you're the best. We believe in you. We support you. All she needed to do is press enter. Instead of that, she pressed delete. And she told me, I really don't want to post or to comment because I know that 1 minute after that, those extremists will come and attack me, my kid, my husband, and my father, and my mom, and our family.
You talking violently? Are you talking about like physically scared or scared of backlash on the internet?
Listen, the problem with the extremists on both sides,
you never know.
That you don't know. You never know. And now listen to this.
We have to stop on that point for a sec.
Yeah.
Because it's important.
Okay.
Meaning, I don't care about comparisons or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say the Jewish community, whatever. I'm just saying that there's levels, right? And the question is to what level? Meaning, you never know what the extreme will do, but there's a likelihood, right? It's like if there's a 1% or if there's a, 0.2% chance of something, me being afraid of it is maybe my delusion. If there's a 50% chance of something happening, then all of a sudden that's a justified fear. So I'm saying, what is she fearful of? And is it something that actually is
First of all, you don't want to take any chances. And it doesn't matter. I'll take, for example, what happened to me. I woke up one day, go to my car, and suddenly on my windshield, there's a note. Stop talking about the joint list or else. 3 points. Plus,
could have been worse.
Plus
like
another
dead horse's head.
Oh, don't worry. I don't want that. But
I'm giving them ideas. Watch The Godfather, guys.
But I gotta be honest. I also censored some words from that letter. We keep it more
civilized.
Civilized, yeah. Yeah. But not only this, you can see on the internet. You can just go and see the extremists. The problem is that the more I see the extremists on both sides, attack me, the more that I'm more focused and understanding that this is the way. And I'll explain to you why. What happened here? There is extremist Arab from our society that for them, I am I'm breaking their agenda. Because I'm proving to them that the majority of the Jewish society are not racist. And then I come to the Jewish society, the minority extreme Jewish society, and I'm proving to them that the majority of the Arab Israeli doesn't want to kill the Jews and they're not terrorists, and they actually want to be part of the Israeli society. But do you know when I realized that I'm on the right path? When those extremists start cooperate against us. When they start cooperating against us, I know that I'm on the right path. I know that
They
I'm
cooperate?
cooperate. You would see that they're even the comments. They're like suddenly agreeing with each other against my activity, my organization, and myself. You see, oh my God, I did something.
It's kind of like the Gideon Levy article. I mean, right? In the end, it's like he somehow weirdly adopts the racist outlook that Arabs are just out there to get you and they're just out there to kill you. And he adopts it and says, you have to be like that.
Listen,
weird.
it's crazy how some Arabs and some Jews, I would say even some, people outside of Israel, knows better than me about my society and what we, but they can do whatever they want.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the state of Israeli Arabs. Because I strongly believe, and I think you're a proof, that if there's an Israeli Arab child who's talented and who comes from a family with values of education and working hard, and he has as much as opportunities as a Jewish kid from pretty much anywhere.
Okay.
And I also know that, for example, in the past 10 years, the number of Israeli Arabs in universities doubled.
Of course.
Doubled in 10 years, which is amazing. Nobody talks about it.
We need more, but of course.
Yes, but it's a good. So, do you agree with my assumption?
Look, is there problems? Yes, we've already established that. But the opportunities for any citizen here in Israel, it's opened to everyone. By the way, it's not only the problems between, for instance, the equality between the Jewish and the Arabs. Sometimes it's among the Jewish themselves, within the Ethiopian community, to the Ashkenaz, to the Mizrahim and Ashkenaz, to the Sfaradim, and so there is.
I challenge that assumption. I challenge the notion that there is I feel that even if an Ethiopian kid who's talented, who wants to succeed, he can do it in Israel.
Could an Arab citizen become prime minister of Israel?
Yes, of course.
Listen.
I think so. Yes.
Listen. Let me explain something.
At
First
least
of all,
he could
before
run.
listen, before
And-
of course,
and-
we've already had that with Azmi Bshara, by the way.
Yes.
He ran
Too
for
bad
prime.
he didn't.
Yeah.
Well, now he has another career.
Yeah.
in-
Being a spy. Anyway, it's not about this. Here in Israel, we need to give better chances, okay, for weaker societies. And it's not a secret that in some communities, some of them in the Arab society, some of them in the Jewish society, that have, if you would start from the starting point, it's not exactly the same. If you go to a specific community, or if you go to a specific city or town, or whatever.
Yeah,
But
go back.
in general, I'm saying, in general, and this is something that I'm agreeing with you. In general, like, it's not an apartheid state. It's not like there's something that would stop you if you want. And as I said before, I am a living proof of that.
Yeah, you don't come from a rich.
I don't come from a
right,
rich. I don't come from a rich family, and I am from Nazareth. And 3 years ago, before I quit my job, my last position was a CEO of a marketing research company, and I was a commander in the IDF as well as an Arab. I'm not saying that, but obviously, it's not black and white. It's not like, oh, you can succeed, point, that's it. No, there is problems and there is issues, social issues that we need to take care. But this is something that it's not because you're an Arab or you're a Jew. It's because of our government and our society that I think that we need to do it better. But this is something to talk about more politics on, about more issues, that how we can treat them, social issues.
So what are some of the top issues you want to tackle?
Well, I think the most important thing right now, it's what's going on with the illegal weapon and the violence in the Arab society. This is the most important issue. By the way, get this. I love to to give examples from or data from a survey that just recently happened. And one of the surveys that was recently asking the Arab community, Arab society, what is the most important issues right now in Israel. The issue of violence and illegal weapon, it came number one with more than 54%. After that, economic and education and health, and only in last place, the conflict with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which means that the Israeli Arab right now is not focusing on that conflict. They don't care about it right now. What they care about is what's going on here. And the problem for our representative is that they don't get it.
Yeah,
they don't get it.
In the past,
Kalman Lieberman, by the way, I don't know if you heard it. But Kalman and Lieberman, the radio show, they did an hour long a few days ago where they talked to random people from the Arab community just to talk about that.
Yeah,
and it was eye-opening.
In the past year, I think 20-something women were murdered in their households, and about half of them, even a bit more, were Arabs. Where Arabs are 20% of the population. So,
not only that, you can see the numbers of the Arab Israelis that they're murdered just this year in 2021. We're already on 20 people in just a month and a half.
But the state can't prevent a husband from killing his wife.
Listen. First of all, it's not about just killing his wife. There is illegal weapons, and there is crimes, and there is all the criminals that they're outside. And yes, we can prevent it. There's 3 steps to prevent this thing. The first step, it's with the police. You know what is Yassam, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ask any Israeli Arab, ask any Arab in East Jerusalem. When you say Yassam, there's some sort of a respect.
It's the police's special commandos.
Yes, special commandos. You don't mess with the Yassam. The police should do a unit specifically to the Israeli Arab crimes and illegal weapon, just like that. Because right now, any police officer would come and you would see them. There's zero respect.
I hear the left-wing organizations now.
Yeah. Listen to me. Any
apartheid state.
Listen to me. And I said it even on Channel 12, and you can see that the people who we were in a panel in talking about it. The Israeli Arab right now, they are even willing that the IDF go inside as long as they target the illegal weapons and the criminals in our society. Yeah. Get this. They are ready for the IDF to get in. So first, make sure that there is a special unit like Yassam targeting not the Israeli Arabs. I'm not saying targeting us, no, and being racist. No, targeting the illegal weapons and doing exactly what they need to do. That's one. Second, we're talking about...
What you're saying now, it's war. It's
war against crime. Yes,
but it's war. It's conquering cities, like conquering Gaza. It's like conquering Gaza.
I am telling you,
just for the listeners.
Some
cities.
No, it is a total exaggeration. It's not conquering or nothing.
Just a little bit.
But it is when you go when you go and you deal with criminals with illegal weapons, zero tolerance. That's what I would do.
Okay.
You don't have to agree with me, by the way. I'm saying
that's
what we need to do. And the thing is, I'm not alone in that. And finally, I'm not alone in that by speaking out loud. Ask anyone right now in the Arab society, even those who are pro-Palestinians, they would say the same thing. Get the police inside to kick their asses.
What's number 2 and 3?
Number 2 in solving the violence and the crimes is when we go to the legal system. Here's the best example, just from weeks ago. Shira Iskov. Everybody knows her story and how she is such a brave.
Our audience doesn't know the story.
She was almost murdered by her husband.
Jews, not Arabs.
Yes, brutally. She was brutalized by her husband, was
Yeah.
stabbing and hitting her,
But survived.
but survived bravely to tell her story. And because she wasn't murdered, do you know what is the maximum punishment for that? 20 years.
Mhm.
This criminal, this animal, should be locked in jail and not see one daylight.
What's the minimum? Because that's what he's gonna get.
The maximum.
I know. I'm saying what's the minimum because that's what he's gonna get.
But this is absurd.
Unfortunately.
This is absurd.
Also,
So
a
what I'm
third
saying,
is cut for you if you behave.
so what
Yeah.
I'm saying
So
is,
he's gonna see the light of day in like 7 or 8 years.
what I'm saying is that we need to make sure the law would be harsh on people who are violent or people who are attempt to kill or kill. And the
Okay.
third and the last point,
Word.
and the
Yeah.
third
Testify.
and the third and the last point, but it is, although it's the third point, but it is the most important point. Education. It all begins with education. We need to educate our kids
Okay.
to start from
But
the beginning.
which leads to my point, which is we don't have much time, right? How long do
Well,
we have?
5 more minutes.
5 more minutes. So my point is that you can march an army to those cities and you can fight and and you can do, but if a culture I'm going to say something not PC, but let's assume there is a culture which is inherently violent.
Okay.
Then you can throw money and weapons.
Okay.
It's
but this
important to
won't
say
sol-
culture and not.
Okay.
He said culture and not race.
Culture
Let me.
and
let me-
education starts at home.
Let me verify it because this is the most we can say bullshit, right? Because this is the most bullshit thing I ever heard.
Why?
I'm not saying that there is not a problem, but what you're doing again is you're generalizing everything again. Okay? My friends, Christians, Muslims, and Druze, they, I don't think that they, in their culture, in our culture, we wake up and say, I want to solve this in terms of violence, or I want to go and come and
If there's a
kick you.
trans woman
No.
in most Israeli Arab homes, that she
no,
will
no,
be
no,
treated-
Now you're going into the LGBT community, which is a different topic. I would love to talk about. It's no problem. By the way, obviously for me and my beliefs, we are all human beings, and we believe in equality for all. As I'm asking for equality between Jews and Arabs, it's equality between all human beings. But we are talking right now about something more. Obviously, we are coming from a traditional society, no doubt, very traditional society. Okay, where as Christians, as Muslims,
and conservative.
and conservative, definitely. I'm not saying that, but we're talking right now about. Most of the crimes is not against the transsexual women or LGBT community. It's about crimes that happens because of violence in general and money and respect. This is the word, respect. That's our problem. I always say, I'm not running away from the fact that there is this thing about respect. Okay? But again, coming and putting it on 2 million people, that's also false. It's not right. But coming and say there is a problem, okay?
Cultural.
It's not about cultural because people are not. There's a bad education system. Bad education system.
But the education starts at home. It starts at home. If at home.
I am not saying not. Trust me, I'm actually with you. But again, we cannot make a general assumption on all the 2 million Israeli Arabs. That's my point.
Yes.
I agree with you, but here I can tell you that my family education was on the highest values there is.
And it
And
shows.
I can tell
And it shows.
Thank you very much. But I can tell you that also my friends, the same thing.
Okay.
So there is and there is. But in order for us to make it sure, we need to be focusing also in education in general in our society. Because again, I'm not like those politicians that will run away and would say, no, there's no problem, no. We do have the problems. I can agree on 50% of what you say. The other 50% is that what you made it sound like, it's all of us like this, which is
No,
not.
I didn't.
Okay?
That's not what I said.
But it sounded like this. So it's very important to clarify it.
Okay.
It's what
Okay.
he meant. It's not. What he
No. So we gotta go because
Yes,
Yosef
yes.
is a
We
very
could
busy.
continue for
Yes.
hours.
We will do
But-
part 2.
Yes,
Yeah.
come again. Thank you so much for coming. Before we go, we are sponsored. We'll do the Messiah later, but we're sponsored by Messiah Israel, so check them out. And also the forward, go to forward.com/2njb and get a discount.
You get a special offer for podcast listeners, $15, 6 months.
You're on social media. Very important, guys. Follow Yosef Haddad.
Yep.
Right?
YOSEPHHADD on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and YouTube.
Amazing.
And
And also, Old Sheva, guys, check them out.
IsraelNationalNews.com. Australian Jewish News, AJM.timesofisrael.com.
And we accept
finally,
donations. Please help us out. Go to 2njb.com/donate and throw some money in our direction. Thank you so much for coming. It was a pleasure.
Thank
pleasure.
you so
For
much.
me
Very
as well.
inspiring.
Thank you very much, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.